Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where just a few days ago Disney let it be known that they are indeed working on a live-action movie version of The Little Mermaid, something that they decided to put out there after the very strong reception for their live-action Beauty and the Beast trailer, the most watched trailer of all time actually in a single day, outperforming Star Wars The Force Awakens. Yes, that's powerful stuff. Well, over the weekend, this Little Mermaid movie, live-action movie, picked up even more momentum. And that was with the Little Mermaid Live, which performed for several nights at the Hollywood Bowl, with a somewhat star-studded cast, but star-studded enough to get a lot of traction on social media, with people like John Stamos and Darren Criss, for instance, from Glee. But then, I think most importantly, Rebel Wilson was also a member of the cast. But overall, what it was a performance at the Hollywood Bowl, this outdoor theater, this historic outdoor theater in Los Angeles. I've actually been there. It's very nice. And what happened was that they had not only a live orchestra, doing all the music from the movie, but they had these well-known actors performing the big musical numbers, right? So this thing was very popular on Twitter and got a lot of coverage. And some of the clips are doing very well online. I'll try and link to some down below in the video description. And that's just the kind of buzz that Disney wants. And one can imagine that they put all this together to see if it would indeed trend. And trend it did. Now, perhaps the most interesting thing to come out of this is that Rebel Wilson was very well received as Ursula. And so some of you even tweeted me and said, do you think she might be Ursula in the movie? And I think based off of her involvement with the Pitch Perfect films, which do quite well, I can definitely see this happening. It's a little bit difficult because Pat Carroll is still alive, but I don't know if she would be up at 89 to a live-action performance to the degree that one would need. But I will say that Rebel Wilson would definitely need Pat Carroll's blessing, I think, for this to really work out. Darren Criss is the only other member of the cast that I could see potentially moving on to the live-action version as Prince Eric. But still, I think that they would probably want to do even better than him as well. I think he was utilized here for his strong fandom and also his strong presence on social media. So Disney basically just used poor Darren Criss. I think the only person in this cast who would go forward would be Rebel Wilson. But that's very good casting indeed. Casting that did not occur to me, but now that I see it, if I were Disney, I'd probably be looking at her very strongly for that role. I think in the past you would have gone with someone like Queen Latifah, but Queen Latifah is really not that popular anymore. And also Queen Latifah, I think Queen Latifah even did Ursula in one of those Annie Leibovitz portraits that they do sometimes, right? Where they have a famous person pretend to be one of the characters from the movies. But Scarlett Johansson, of course, was Cinderella, and Lily James ended up getting the role in the actual movie. So I think Rebel Wilson would be a great choice, and I'm curious, did any of you watch any of the Little Mermaid live clips, and would you like Rebel Wilson to be Ursula as well? Now, speaking of, wanting the fans to be happy, but, trying to walk that thin line, right? Ben Affleck is continuing very dutifully to promote his standalone Batman movie. And there was a story that came up late Friday that I wanted to discuss, and that's that Ben Affleck said that he would not retell a classic Batman story, but would instead want to do an original story so that the fans would be able to experience it, along with him. That they wouldn't already know what was going to happen. But he didn't say he wasn't above borrowing or stealing elements from famous Batman stories. He likened it to what Zack Snyder did with Batman v Superman, and how that was very loosely based on Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. Now, if I were at Warner Brothers, I'd put out a proclamation, and I would say, no one shall say anything ever again will be like Batman v Superman. And again, I liked the movie quite a bit. I thought it was just spectacular. But I think that, it definitely has a stink to it, unfortunately, and I wouldn't want that stink to spread. So I would be like, please don't reference it for what's going to go on with your original standalone Batman movie. And now, this is like Batman Earth 1, which of course plays with the mythology and takes certain elements but twists them to a new story. But that's the whole point of an alternate universe storyline, which is the situation with Batman Earth 1. Now, as I've said before, I think if you have a problem with some of the changes that have been made to the DC movies, you really should look at it as an alternate universe where, it's not exactly what you're used to in the comics, although there are rumors that there might be shakeups in the comic book division. Some of you have been tweeting me. DC's just having a rough time overall. And I think they've kind of lost their grounding of what are these core characters, as they just, there's change upon change upon change, and I think they've lost the foundation somewhere. But anyway, I think the real problem with Batman v Superman was unfortunately Chris Terrio. I think that Chris Terrio, much like Julie Taymor adapting Spider-Man, is not a comic book guy. So coming from such an outside perspective, he tried to take the classic storytelling that he knows, just like Julie Taymor did, and take the Batman mythos and break it to fit what he wanted it to, right? Like, for instance, as I've said before, Chris Terrio was like, both of their mothers are named Martha. How can I not use that? And who would have known it would come back to bite him in the butt the way that it did, right? I mean, I thought it was fine. It made sense to me, but I think that I actually thought it worked very well, to be perfectly honest. But you can't deny the reaction. So I think that Geoff Johns will be the saving grace of the Batman original story. That Ben Affleck wants to tell, because Geoff Johns, of course, comes from the comic book world. I think he's very tuned in to what the characters need and what the audience needs, and so I think that he is an excellent partner for Ben Affleck, and I continue to have a lot of faith in the DCU. I still have a lot of faith in it, and also in this standalone Ben Affleck movie. But I was just curious to what your thoughts on it. I thought you should hear that bit of news, and I was curious as to whether or not you want an original story, because that's my big problem with the animated movies, right? I'm like, just stop retelling stories I've already read, and also you're keeping people from reading those stories. Tell original stories that inspire people to go back and read the original comics, right? So this is exactly what I want, but I know so many of you enjoy the animated movies. I'd be curious to see how you feel. All right, so the third story of the day, talking about comic book stuff, I just couldn't resist including this story. This was something that also came out late on Friday, and that is that the U.S. military continues to try and build their own real-life Iron Man, which I think is just spectacular. Now, the suit is called a Talos, a tactical assault light operator suit. And it's a little bit also like Edge of Tomorrow, the suits that they wore there. But as I said in my coverage for that movie, it's a little hard to know when you stop wearing the suit and the suit starts wearing you. Like for instance, this suit says it has protection from close range small weapons fire, thermal imaging sensors like Iron Man, and also Batman to some degree, although Alfred does that remotely from an undisclosed location, the Batcave. And then also power assisted limbs to kick in doors. But I don't understand at what point your bone would shatter from the kick, or at what point, how do you balance it out? But I'm sure there's the science to it, and of course the military doesn't want to have the soldiers wearing this to be injured. The whole point of the suit is for not to be injured. But they said they're making a lot of progress on the Talos, and that it's really meant to be worn by the first guy to go in like in urban warfare to enter a building, right? The guy who kicks in the doors and is first in through the door. So we saw a high mortality rate there, and so one of the things that's really spurred us to build the Talos and perfect it is to get rid of that problem, and I think that's really commendable. So kudos to the military for taking inspiration from the comic books, and I'd be really curious to see if it works. And what's even more interesting is that this was shown at kind of like the Comic-Con for weapons that they have. It's an actual convention that all the different military powers of the world go and they visit, and different kinds of weapons and body armor, etc., is showcased for them to potentially purchase. I just think that's a fascinating thing that not too many people know about it, and I actually integrated it into my Superbia comic book toward the end of the 16-issue run. But anyway, those are the three stories of the day. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on all those. Then I have a really good question from Abigail Lilly, and I've gotten similar questions to this before, but I think it's something that is always on the forefront of a number of your minds, and so I just wanted to bring it up again. So Abigail Lilly says, please use my question. Tons of cute emojis. All right. She says, hey Grace, I love all the comic book TV shows on air. I have an idea that I know a lot of comic book fans would love. So my question is, how do you pitch an idea for a TV show or a movie to a company? I want my idea to be effective. Thanks for reading my question. Hope you have a great day. Sincerely, Abby. Some more cute emojis. Well, Abby, if your idea involves a company's already their properties that they already have, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to pitch them if you aren't already established within the industry, because it's their property. So the best thing that you can do, as I wouldn't expect to get any money or involvement in it, but I would, just probably maybe try and get some momentum for it as a fan idea. See if you can get it covered, trending on Twitter, and then maybe the company would pay attention to it and say, oh, a lot of people are interested in that. Maybe we should do it, right? Then the other thing is, if you want to be someone who pitches just TV shows and movies in general, I just wanted to give you the basic setup. So there's two ways you can go about it. You can become a working professional, and then you'll always be pitching ideas, right? Because you always want to get more work. So you go to school, you go to film school, you study writing, for TV or for movies. You get a gig on, like you get a screenplay out there, you get an agent, then you'll start pitching. Also, you'll get on a TV staff, and then you'll have an agent there, and then you can pitch. And you're not going to pitch right away. You're going to need to work on other properties originally to show that you know what you're doing, right? That's probably what you're going to start out doing. But then when you have a little bit of success under your belt, then you can start pitching. So that's one route that you can do. It takes time, and also I would never fall in love too much with any idea, right? I mean, because you're in this for the long run if this is what you want to do professionally. So you should think of your career as a marathon, not a sprint. The other thing that you can do is, if you have a really great original idea, is that you can try and do it independently or as a web show, right? Because you can't really pitch independent TV, although Amazon apparently is always looking. So you can do a pitch that way. For instance, we've been talking about Doug Liman's movie that he's making about a sniper. That was an original pitch that someone, we talked about that, pitched when they were teaching English over in Asia, Japan, I believe, and now it's being made into a movie, and that guy has an agent, and he's a screenwriter, and he pitches all the time, I'm sure. So that's another way that you can go. And it's difficult, and again, as I said, you'll make life a lot easier for yourself, Abby, if you don't fall too much in love with this specific idea and feel this is the one that's going to make or break you. You should also learn how to pitch and also the style for pitching and how it should be presented, what it's supposed to look like. It's usually a one-pager, they call it, and it has a log line and all the different information that should be included. But anyway, Abby, I hope that's helpful, and I would also tell you that you should almost always have an agent or a manager when pitching, unless you do it through one of these these things that are looking for pitches, like Amazon or the Blacklist. That's another way that you can do it as well. And then they have built-in protections. So I hope that's helpful, Abby. I think it's great that you're thinking creatively and that you want to get involved in the industry. So I also think it's really great that you want to do it the right way and you want to make sure you know what you're doing. That is the recipe for success overall. All right, so thank you everybody for tuning in. That's today's morning movie news. Please write down below today's top 3 news stories, Abby's question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.